Welcome in, everybody, to the Hawks Eye podcast. I am your host, Bryce Coots, and today it's that time. It's schedule release. The Seahawks schedule has officially been put out for the 2026 season. We will have a whole bunch of breakdowns on the matchups we like, primetime games, even talk a little bit about how the preseason is going to line up. But to break it all down with me today, I got Mookie Alexander, field goals editor, joining me on the show. We're going to break down the whole schedule. We're going to take your comments, how you guys feel about it, and me and Mookie will give our early Seahawks win-loss predictions based off how this schedule lies. So before we do that, guys, if you haven't already, head on over to that QR code up in the top corner. That will lead you to all things Hawks Eye. That'll take you to the Discord chat. It'll take you to all the audio platforms for the show, as well as to my Twitter. So that way, if you guys have any questions with that, you can feel free to DM me over there. But other than that, join the Discord group. It's a fantastic community that we built over there. There's constantly great content that's being put out in there, from Josh to Seahawks Nerd. There's a whole bunch of individuals in there that are constantly bringing great content to it. So make sure you guys head over and join that. But now that that's out of the way, let's talk with Mookie about the Seahawks schedule right after this.
That's all we do, baby. It's our time.
This relentless Seattle defense continues to have a night. Their sixth sack.
First and 10 at the Seattle 44. Here comes the blitz. May. Kennedy tries to throw. Ball comes out. Going the other way with it. Turning up the field. It's headed away through. And he scores. Touchdown. Play faking him. Sanders going to roll left. Looking. Sam throw. Back in the end zone. Is it caught? It's out. It is. Touchdown. Seahawks.
We did not care. It's always been about us and what we do. And now we're going to the Super Bowl.
And there we got it. My host and partner in crime for tonight's show, Mookie Alexander. Mookie, how are you, my friend? It's kind of an odd thing considering every single Seahawks member of the Seahawks Syndicate right now is doing a live show. So appreciate anyone that's over here watching the show. But Mookie, what's going on?
I mean, the good news is if you don't catch the other ones live, then you can watch them later. If you don't catch ours live right now, then you can watch it afterwards. If you don't get us right now, it's not like this video is going to be deleted afterward, in the immediate aftermath. So yeah, I'm just thrilled that the schedule's out because we've had our fair share of fakes and leaks, and it becomes a much busier day than people realize behind the scenes when you're trying to piecemeal these things together. Only the NFL can make a schedule release such a grand event. But certainly for anybody who thought that the Seahawks wouldn't get a lot of national love, even though they were Super Bowl champions, I think this kind of disproves that theory. They are getting so much national attention and also a lot of primetime home games. I can't stress that enough. 5 primetime home games is a big freaking deal.
You got to think about it. Realistically, Seattle right now has more primetime home games than they just have regular home games, because they will have 9 home games this year. 4 of those are just your typical Sunday kickoffs. Everything else is going to be prime time. You know, and you look at even a stretch there, because I'm pretty sure there's a stretch where they have back-to-back primetime games when I believe it's Kansas City and Chicago. They're on a back-to-back tilt there, primetime games, one after another.
Yes, Kansas City on a Sunday night, just like way back in 2018. I believe that was one of the first losses Patrick Mahomes ever suffered as Chiefs starting quarterback, was that night when Seattle upset them in that shootout, and they clinched a playoff spot as well. It was probably one of Pete's and his coaching jobs and one of Shoddy's finest play calling jobs. I mean, that was a classic Russ Mahomes duel. That was amazing. And then Chicago the following week. We thought that Chicago would be the opening night opponent, and they pulled the rug out from under us. It turns out we get the Super Bowl immediate rematch instead. But, you know, I don't want to get too worked up about who Seattle plays in week 1 and who they don't. It's still a must-see game, Chicago and Seattle. And look, I know that the Bears had their fair share of close wins last year, a lot of stuff that's probably not sustainable, but that's not to assume they won't get better. So that was almost the NFC Championship game last year. It could be the NFC Championship game this year. So looking forward to that. And the home finale, the regular season home finale, Christmas Day. So we're working Christmas, friends. Christmas Day, prime time on Fox, not Netflix, not on the Netflix paywall. You can go keep your Stranger Things and comedy roast over there and whatever else they got there. But against the Rams, Christmas football, if the Seahawks win that, that's the perfect present for me. As long as it's not a completely irrelevant game. It's like,
Yeah.
we assume it's going to be relevant. We assume it's going to have huge implications. Personally, I would like for that to be the night the Seahawks clinch the NFC West, as opposed to having it come down to Week 18 again.
Yeah, I wouldn't exactly love having it come down to Week 18. And so, Mookie, with that being said, let's take a look at this schedule here, and we can kind of go through it. So, based off how this shapes up, we got Week 1, we've got New England, and I know there's a lot of Seahawk fans that are annoyed about this, that we're playing the Patriots, and I had an inkling that it was going to probably be New England. It always seems to be the Super Bowl rematch if they're on each other's schedules after the Super Bowl. It's the NFL loves it. Hey, let's give a rematch out there. Let's see who the team that lost can knock off the winner in the new year. I do find it surprising that they went with New England given all of the turmoil of this offseason. I think they're hoping maybe now it kind of pushes it to the side a little bit, but I think in more ways than one, it might bring it all raging back to the surface.
Tell you what, if more details come out that make this uncomfortable for Vrabel, I can't guarantee Vrabel's the coach Week 1. Everybody else on the roster is like, fine. And there's still drama to come. Like, we don't know if A.J. Brown is actually going to go to New England. I mean, it feels like he is going to get dealt by Philadelphia one team or another, but New England has been kind of the odds-on favorite to land him. But it is a somewhat different matchup. I mean, the Patriots kept a lot of their guys, much like the Seahawks did, but New England, understandably, was a little bit more aggressive in free agency than Seattle. They signed Romeo Doubs to a pretty big contract. They signed Elijah Vera-Tucker. I think they made some other offensive line addition, and they signed Kevin Byard in free agency just as that veteran ball hawking safety. And they also signed Draymond Jones, former Seahawk, who kind of revived his career in Baltimore and in Tennessee last season. So, hey, when the Broncos and Seahawks met in Super Bowl 48, that was an all-time ass whooping. And then they had an immediate-ish rematch. I think that was a Week 3 game the following year. And we got the game that we thought we were going to get in the Super Bowl, which was Seattle and Denver playing a thriller, and Seattle ends up winning the game in overtime. So I don't want to just assume another comfortable Seattle victory. But if there's one positive to this being the immediate rematch, if there are some kinks that need to be worked out, if there's some first game jitters for Brian Fleury, for example, or some of the new guys on defense, some of the rookies, it's an AFC game that you're starting the season with. It means absolutely nothing as far as tiebreakers are concerned, or it means very, very, very little. So in case Seattle slips up, it's not the end of the world. They don't drop a division game. They don't drop a conference game. And if they win, of course, it's a bonus, and we all get to laugh at New England again.
This is true. Honestly, when I look at the schedule, I really do like how it shapes up for Seattle, where the bye is situated there. And the one thing I'll say, too, is you get all your AFC games out of the way in the first 10 weeks. Mm-hmm. So during that back half, it really does matter. And the thing I think that's kind of, two parts here. I think it's interesting, the Rams there, kind of bookend the end of the year, 16, 18, the one thing I do like, though, is it allows for some of these draft picks, like a Julian Neal, like a Bud Clark, to really understand McDonald's defense, really be into it at that point, where you might get away with, get out of some of the mistakes they make earlier on in the year when they're trying to get, up to speed with it. It allows them to be more immersed in it at the back half when you're going to need it versus those Rams teams potentially.
Yeah, because the Rams are going to be the team that is expected to be neck and neck with Seattle. Look, there's no quote-unquote easy portion of the schedule outside of, I guess, 9 and 10, playing Arizona and the Raiders back-to-back. And the fact that the Raiders game is a Week 10 means we don't have a great idea as to whether or not it'll be Cousins or Mendoza starting. So we'll see how that goes. But I like that you have kind of the quote-unquote easier games and then a bye and then the home stretch. Other than the Giants, who I think will be better this year, but not great. every team you're playing was a playoff team last year or pushing for the playoffs. And then there's Dallas, but Dallas had some reasonable excuses as far as to why they didn't make the playoffs. So I like the way that the schedule is structured, except for ending the season with 2 straight road games again. They went like 2 decades plus not having to do that. And now this is the 3rd year in a row where it's road game for week 17 and 18. And the only reason why I note that is that's all the more important for them to win the division, at least get home field advantage for the first weekend of the playoffs, or even you get a bye. It is so hard to win several playoff road games, such that ending with consecutive road games means you're going from that to playoff time. If you end up with 3 straight road games to go to the Super Bowl, that's 5 in a row. So I'm not pleased about that, but in general, look how front loaded the first half of the schedule is with home games. That's a chance to kind of build up, defend your home turf, do it even better than last year. You lost 2 home games last year. Do it even better this year. Like Patriots, Chargers, Niners, Chiefs, Bears, Cardinals, they're going to be favored in pretty much all of those games. And while I'm not expecting a perfect record, like you want to stock up on those. You don't want to drop those home games early.
When I look at the first, let's just break it down by 4 weeks increments here, Mookie. When I look at the first 4 weeks of the season, like going into that week 4 matchup versus the Chargers, I don't see a way Seattle potentially isn't 3-0. You jump out on New England, you got to go to Arizona, which basically kind of is like our home away from home in the warm part of the down there. Then you go to Washington, and Washington's this team I think that still hasn't fully committed to the idea they're in a full rebuild. And, they have the rookie quarterback, but there's still some pieces there that they need to move on from at a point. Washington's going to be kind of reeling. That's probably, in my opinion, the one wild card there out of those first 4 games, because the Chargers game, that's going to be, in my opinion, your toughest game.
In the first 4 weeks, yeah, the Chargers game, I think, will be the toughest game. New England, I still think that they'll match up favorably. There's still legit question marks about the interior of New England's offensive line. I know they drafted the dude from Utah. Are they going to really put Campbell at guard? Are they going to keep him at tackle and move the other dude to guard? They're going to play Vera Tucker. Is Vera Tucker even going to be healthy? Because he's had a significant injury history there. But Arizona should be a dub. The interesting storyline to me there is that right away, Jeremiah Love's home debut, and it is going to be also the first road game for Jadarian Price. The Commanders game, it really depends on it's one of the 2 10 a.m. kickoffs that Seattle has, and that hasn't been an issue for them for years now, even in the last several years under Pete. They were very injury-stricken last year. Jaden Daniels kept getting hurt, and Dan Quinn, I think, kind of irresponsibly kept trotting him out there, even when he was clearly not 100%. They're kind of betwixt and between. They make some splashy free agent signings that indicate they want to get back to what was that NFC Championship run a couple of years ago. Who they signed? They signed Chenal. I think they signed Chason, and they also added Odafe Owe. So I think their defense could be better this year. In fact, it should be better. Their offense, I think, is still a legitimate question mark, because you wonder about Daniel's health. You wonder about the receiver position. Like, are they going to bring in Brandon Ayuk whenever San Francisco gets rid of him? They didn't re-sign Debo. So, and of course, McLaurin is McLaurin, but there's a whole lot in flux there with Washington. The Chargers game, I think, could be the toughest. Again, Chargers offensive line is going to be a big question mark because of what the unspeakable things they allow as far as Justin Herbert getting pressured and sacked. Different story when Mike McDaniel is your offensive coordinator, though. So it's the McDaniel versus McDonald matchup that I am fascinated by. And the Chargers defense, of course, they lose Jesse Minter, but Harbaugh rarely has bad defenses. So not an easy start, but it could be a lot worse. Like, imagine if you started the season with Chicago and then, say, Philadelphia and then one of the Rams games and, the Chargers, and just keep that in there. That's a pretty tough stretch. This, to me, is fairly favorable. At worst, 3-1 through four games.
Yeah, and then that's realistically kind of how I see it. Through 4 games, I could see them being in that spot. And then you get the Niners at home early in the year. Now, again, this may be a point at week 5 where the substation issues have already hit the 49ers, and we're seeing, issues already there. Then you go to Denver. That's going to be interesting because I feel like that might be the first game back for Bo Nix, depending on how he's coming off his ankle injury and whatnot. If he's rearing to go and ready to go, because I'm not sure he's going to be up to speed right at the beginning of the year, because he got injured so late last year with that fracture to his ankle. So you could see Bo Nix, and then you come back to the Kenneth Walker revenge game, as some people are already anointing it with. We know Patrick Mahomes will probably be back for that week 7. And then you've got Chicago and Caleb Williams. And to your point, Mookie, earlier on, you mentioned how that could have been an NFC Championship game last year. It could be a preview of it this year, potentially. So when you look at those next kind of 4 games there, how do you feel for that from week 5 to week 8 for Seattle?
I think where they could get tripped up is that San Francisco-Denver stretch. San Francisco, I think they'll beat. Of course, I'm sitting here in May saying that. And come September, it could be, hey, Brock Purdy has turned his ankle and he's out for several more weeks. It's Mac Jones time again. But it's more of the quick turnaround from playing San Francisco to going to high elevation Denver on a short week. Like, that's kind of the one game of all the games that really concerned me in that first half of the year. It's playing Denver on a short week. If you're playing Denver off of a bye week, different story. We remember kind of the issue they had getting acclimated for week 1 at Denver in 2018. I think they went in too late, and they looked pretty bad defensively. And that was the game where Wilson got sacked a bunch, and they ended up losing it late. So I think that they could end up dropping that Denver game. And then the Broncos fans can go do their victory laps like, Bo Nix is the true franchise savior. They can't use we won the Russell Wilson trade line, though. That one got killed off as of last February. But no harm, no foul. You can't win them all. But yes, at least you get a mini bye, as it's often said, the 10 days between Denver and then Kansas City. I am of the opinion that Kansas City is not going to be the Kansas City from the dynasty years. And I know they brought in Walker. Mahomes should be back. But I just think that the Chiefs are in a very, very tough division. Like, Denver is probably still going to be good. I assume Knicks is going to be back week 1. If that broken ankle isn't healed by week 1, then he must have broken the shit out of it. But like, Denver's going to be there. The Raiders should be better, even if they're not great. And the Chargers, I expect them to also be better. Like, the days where Kansas City is like a 1A, and then everybody else is like a distant 3A, 3B, 3C. I think those days are coming to an end. And the Chiefs just lost so many people on defense. So I think that this is not going to be the same Chiefs contending type team that the league and everybody else expects them to be. The Bears game, of course, is going to be, you would hope to be a fun one. Ben Johnson and Mike, I just mentioned McDaniel and Mike McDonald. Well, here's Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald. That's going to be another schematic fascination. And also Caleb Williams, when he played McDonald's defense 2 years ago, looked lost beyond belief, but also that Bears coaching staff was lost beyond belief. Different Bears team this time, and Caleb Williams, to his credit, much better at avoiding sacks last year than he was 2 years ago. And
it'll be the Kobe Bryant revenge game at that as well.
Yes, definitely. So you get Kobe Bryant, and it's the Pacific Northwest connection, because you got Thieneman also there with the Bears as well. So yeah, the 4 primetime games in the first 8 weeks, and 3 of them are at home. And then the one that is in Denver, not ideal to go there on a short week, but it's also at least not a long travel.
Yeah, and so for me, when I look at that stretch there, Mookie, I do as well see the Denver game being the hiccup in that, just because, to your point, you're going there on a Thursday night. They have a very good defense. It's not like I think their defense is going to take some massive step back. We were talking about them in Seattle, and Houston's really the top 3 defenses in the NFL last year. Knicks could be back. He may not still be fully comfortable yet, but he's going to be back potentially. And it's going to be interesting to see how Seattle handles that travel on to that area and acclimates themselves and gets used to it all. And that, to me, is a game that I don't expect to be, as weird as it sounds, I don't expect it to be an exciting game. I expect it to be like a kind of maybe even like the Chicago game a few years ago where we went to Chicago, where it was just ridiculously hard to get any, momentum going or anything. And I think it's going to be a defensive struggle in that game for a lot of reasons. And I think it's really going to test Seattle's run game. The other thing I was going to say too is I like how week 5 is when we first see San Francisco, especially with Brian Fleury being our offensive coordinator. It gives him a few weeks to get into a bit of a rhythm of how he wants to do things without coming out of the gate and having to play Kyle Shanahan and the group that knows him and all that, like it gives a bit of time for him to add a little bit of flavor to what he's potentially going to want to do and understand, his offense and where its strengths and its weaknesses are. I think the Chicago game is going to be the most fun one out of that group. I think that's going to be the most exciting game. Just because at that point, you're going to see if Chicago's what they did last year is for real, and if they're going to be another contender potentially in the NFC. I see Denver kind of as you trip up there. I see the Chargers as you trip up in the first four. Now going here, you get Arizona, you get the Raiders, you get the bye, you get the Niners again, and then you get Dallas. I think, again, Arizona at home in week 9, it's going to be a bit colder in Seattle. Jacoby Brissett is going to have nightmares of Tyrese Knight and DeMarcus Lawrence all over again. I don't think Seattle's going to have too much of an issue with that one. The Vegas game, to your point, is going to be interesting because who knows, maybe that might be the starting point for Mendoza there in Vegas.
Mm-hmm. So Arizona, we expect to be a bottom feeder. In fact, they got no primetime games. I believe there were only 5 teams that got completely shut out. Even Cleveland got 1, and Arizona got none. Tennessee also got 0, which is sort of surprising because I think Cam Ward is exciting enough that maybe they want one, but Tennessee is just not a big market team, big drawing team rather. They're in a decent market, but Arizona should be a win. Las Vegas, I think, should be a win. I'm not expecting them to be great, but I also don't expect them, again, to be an embarrassment. Be fascinating to see McDonald scheme up against the guy he was the boss over just last year. So now it's McDonald against Kubiak for, I believe, the first time. Because when McDonald was defensive coordinator in Baltimore, when they played Denver, Kubiak wasn't calling plays yet for the Broncos. That was
and when he was in San Francisco, he was a passing game coordinator, so he wouldn't have either then at that point either. So that would have been the first time. Yeah, this will be the first time.
Yep. So then you get that bye week. I don't like early buys. So middle of the season, I think is perfect, especially because after that is a division game, and San Francisco, that's another home away from home. It's the home of Seattle's Super Bowl victory. And I'm just hoping that the Niners are at this point 0-10 or 0-11. No, I'm just kidding. I truly hope that they have forfeited the season by week 4 instead. But Dallas, that could be a fun one. I think the Cowboys offense is going to really be one of the best in the league. And Prescott, when healthy, he's a very good quarterback. Their running game, I think, is going to be good. They got Javonte Williams having a breakout or kind of almost a comeback season, if you will. Is their defense going to be better? I don't remember who their defensive coordinator is this year because I know they fired Eberflus. But it's not hard to be better than what Eberflus put up last season. But Dallas has got some talent on the defensive line. They got Quentin Williams they got to deal with. They got they drafted Malachi Lawrence and they drafted Jayshon Barham. So they got a couple of guys who might have been on Seattle's radar. Barham for sure. I'm trying to think of some other. Kenny Clark, of course, there from the Parsons trade. So they're rebuilding. They're getting some guys to try and be respectable. But again, that is probably the easiest, quote unquote, easiest portion of the season as we sit here in mid-May. Arizona missed the playoffs last year. So did Vegas. So did Dallas. So that is kind of your soft spot on paper. And thanks, Misfit Izuraku. It was also a guy they drafted last year. So it's a lot of young pass rushers on that team. Whether they gel into something good remains to be seen. But yeah, 4-game stretch. And also a Monday night. Like that's 2 Monday night games. You got to love it.
Do you remember the last Monday night game when Dallas came to Seattle?
Yeah, I moved to Seattle, I think about 3 months later. And that's genuinely one of the games that almost got Holmgren fired because they were up 10. They were down big, and then they came back up 10, managed to blow that lead. That's when Julius Jones just ran over Seattle. Keyshawn
the last,
Johnson,
8 minutes of that game, he accumulated almost 100 yards on his own.
Yeah, and Keyshawn Johnson got a touchdown that never should have existed. Even with review at the time, that should have been overturned. Give up the onside kick. And that was like a Jerry Rice 49ers Jerry Rice showed up. He had 8 for 1.
Who was the quarterback for that team?
I think Hasselbeck started that game.
For Dallas.
Was it Bledsoe that day?
It was Bledsoe.
but because the following year they got their lick back because Bledsoe that's when Big Play Babs started. The
Yeah,
legend of
that's when
Big
Big
Play
Play
Babs
Babs
began.
started the Super Bowl run that year. Yep.
Flipped it on their heads, got the win from down 7 with a minute to go. And then the following year was the Romo fumble in the playoff game. So that 3-year sequence was like the best 3-year sequence you could probably ever have for endings between two teams.
Yeah, well, then you go to because then you got the Romo special in 2006. Yeah, geez, Dallas hasn't been right since. Realistically, the only time they've come up here and won was the year of 2014. They came in here with DeMarco Murray and Des Bryant and Romo and beat us. And then also at the same time, it was also the preseason where Tony Romo's back became the problem and Dak Prescott took over that team that year. So I agree. It's going to be interesting. The other thing that's kind of cool in that span there, Mookie, is that's the trade deadline. So maybe Max Crosby ends up being a Seattle Seahawk. Who knows? I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. You never know at that point of the year. But yeah, I do like how we're coming off the bye. We go play San Francisco because realistically, you could be at a point at that point in the year, you might be 4-0 in your own division. Right? Mm-hmm. Like you could have 2 wins on the Cardinals, a win on the Niners, and have the opportunity to go 4-0 and really, to a point, put yourself in a good spot to win the division. Dallas is going to be interesting this year. And I know people are going, oh, Dallas, everyone says they're going to choke. They're going to do this. I think what Shoddy's doing down there is impressive. I think they've added some good pieces to that defense. That game's going to be a lot tougher and I think more exciting than people may give it credit for. And I like how you play Dallas. It's a primetime game, and then you come back and you play the Giants. And at that point, we don't know if Scatterboo or Jackson Dart, either one of them won't have a severe concussion at that point from the way they want to play football. So you come out of that, and I saw in the chat someone goes, well, I hope our O-line's healthy when they take on the Giants team. I know the Giants have added some really good pass rushers. Like, let's be honest, they added Reese. They added Carter last year. Brian Burns is there. The rest of that team is very spotty and hit and miss. And I get it's John Harbaugh. And I think that's kind of a cool story, too, in this schedule is Mike McDonald gets to go up against John and Jim this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first Jim in week 4, and then John in week 14. But certainly, and of course, the game that kind of started the Seahawks should hire Mike McDonald was Seattle and Baltimore. And Ravens fans after the Super Bowl run were going, man, we should have kept McDonald. We should have fired Harbaugh. Like, I don't know. Realistically, that was never going to happen. It would have been a shock to fire him a couple of years ago. It was probably time this past season. But I know what stings for them and why I love it for the Seahawks is that they had a super coach in the building. They had a natural successor in effect. And he ended up walking to a team that he turns from awful defense to elite defense to Super Bowl champion in a way that resembles a lot of the great Baltimore Ravens teams of the past. And instead, McDonald's here. Harbaugh's got to kind of rebuild his own reputation and rebuild the Giants.
Yep. And I think it's going to be tougher than people realize. Then obviously, we come out of that Giants game, and then you got Philadelphia on a Saturday, which makes it kind of a primetime game. Who knows what that Philadelphia team looks like, and if there hasn't been a mutiny in that building with Nick Sirianni in that group there. Then it gets to be the interesting part because then it's Christmas Day versus the LA Rams. And really, I got a feeling that 15 to week 18 is really going to be the divisional decision and maybe even the conference decision on who's 1 and 2. We could very well walk into week 18 and have that be for first place in the NFC going into the playoffs, realistically. And I hate how Carolina is sandwiched in there again.
Yeah, that is amazing that they slotted them in the same week as last year. So just like last year was at Carolina and then at San Francisco, this time it's at Carolina and then at the Rams. And look, I'm trying to remember. It was who did they play? It was the Rams on Thursday night, and then Carolina, and then San Francisco. So they just changed one team. They just swapped out the 49ers for the Rams. Yep. So that's going to be a tough last 4. The Eagles might be dysfunctional, or they might end up being this super team that kind of carries Jalen Hurts, I guess you could say, because look, Hurts has had some better years. It's certainly this 2022 year where they lost the Super Bowl. He was MVP runner-up. 2024, he wasn't amazing or anything, but he's good enough, and he got Super Bowl MVP. They're essentially as strong as their offensive line and their defense. Their offensive line has got legitimate question marks because Stoutland is retired, or they reassigned him to some other spot in the organization. But that's not the same O-line that we knew from a couple of years ago. And the evidence is born out of the tush-push success, noticeably dropped last year. And on the defensive side, I mean, that is a lethal defense. You got the edge rushing talent. You've got the linebacker play. You've got the secondary with now Rika's part of that secondary, but Rika's going to be quote unquote the weak link when you're dealing with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. So Philadelphia, I think, is going to have one of the top defenses in the league. That is one of the only cold weather city games Seattle's going to play late in the year. And like cold weather, I mean, not Seattle, damp, cold, 40 degrees, like week 15, that could be easily a snow game or a muddy, rainy game that could kind of either even the playing field or take Seattle's offense out of rhythm because they play, I think the Eagles play on natural grass, don't they?
They do.
And the Seahawks are obviously on turf. They're not going to, I know the World Cup is in Seattle next month, but they're not going to swap the grass to the Seahawks stadium permanently. It's going to go back to turf after the tournament's over. But yes, those last 4 games, that's going to be tough. I would be really impressed if Seattle swept those last 4 games. I would not discount Carolina making a little push to improve upon last year's 8-9 record. Maybe Bryce Young has figured some things out. Like they could have knocked the Rams out in round 1. They were that close. They were super close, and their defense just completely melted down. If they can build upon their success from last year, especially with the changes they made on defense, they could be a trickier team than people expect. But, I mean, again, the first 4 weeks, I would say, not too difficult, not easy either. The subsequent 4 weeks, pretty tricky stretch. The next 4 weeks after that, probably the softest stretch, especially when you have a bye in there. And then the last 6 games, that's going to be the last mile of a marathon where your legs are burning, you're tired, you got the lactic buildup, and you're just wanting to cross the finish line. But it's going to be fun. I guarantee you that it's going to be fun.
I have a better analogy. It's like Eddie Lacy in Seattle trying to get 5 yards.
Yes, the lactic is building up. His legs are tired.
His legs are tired. He had to run from the backfield to the line of scrimmage. So, Mookie, let's kind of go through this. Give me your early initial Seahawks record prediction.
All right. Last year when we did this, I think I said 11-6, and you were on the 14-3 train. So
no, 13-4.
13-4. Sorry.
And it was not a train; it was an island.
Here's the island. Where is John McGrath? We need him for this.
I know, right? We're missing John McGrath right now. It's disappointing. I need my fellow cabana partner that hung out with me there on the beach.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go win on opening night against New England, win in Arizona, win at the Commanders. I'm gonna go loss to the Chargers. I think that's going to be a tricky game, and that McDaniel's going to figure something out that makes McDonald pull his hair out and then take that anger out on the 49ers the following week. So 4-1 through the first 5 games, lost to Denver on the short week, beat Kansas City, beat Chicago, beat Arizona, beat Vegas, 8-2 with the bye. Out of the bye, sweep San Francisco. I think they'll get Dallas. I'm kind of stuck on that one. So I'm at 9-2, I think.
Yeah.
Or 9-2 from the 49ers game. Maybe similarly, they might just end up dropping a second home game, but 7-2 at home is better. Is 6-2 last year. 7-2 is by mathematical definition, an improvement. So I think they might drop the Dallas game, and that'll get ESPN ready to call the Cowboys the Super Bowl contenders. Super Bowl champions would be. They'll beat the Giants. So that gets into what, 10-3 now? And then we got 4 games left. I think they keep the Pete Carroll tradition of beating the Eagles going. And then they beat Philadelphia in Philly. They beat the Rams on Christmas Day, beat Carolina, and then lose to the Rams on the final day. But I think that there'll be some like tiebreakers going their way. That means that they still win the division. So I'm going to go 13-4. I'm sure if you ask me again, 12-5 would be my general record, or not general record, but I think between 11 and 13 wins is what I'm going for. So my absolute optimist is 13-4, and they win the division. I'm not sure about the 1 seed, but certainly a top 2 seed.
All right. So I went 13-4 last year, and they exceeded expectations and went 14-3. I'm going for them to be 13-4 this year, and I have the kind of where you were talking, Mookie. I've got that 13-11 wins is kind of the wheelhouse I think this team's in. But I'm going 13-4 again. So I've got them beating New England, beating Arizona, beating Washington, and beating San Francisco, and beating the Chargers. I have them beating San Francisco, so I have them starting 5-0. As crazy as that sounds, I have them starting 5-0, and then they get their first loss. I have them losing to Denver, but then I have them beating Kansas City, Chicago, Arizona, and the Raiders. So going into that bye, they are at that point they would be what, 10-1? They'd be 10-1 at that point.
9-1 because that's the only loss you have to Denver. Yeah,
sorry, 9-1. You're right. They'd be 9-1. I have them coming out and beating the Niners again, and sweeping the Niners and sweeping the Cardinals. I have them at that point. I've got them losing. What do I have them losing here? Trying to remember here. I've got them losing to Dallas. So that puts them at what at that point?
So they've lost 2 then, right? Because you said
So they lost 2. So give me what I'm at. I'm trying to do
9-1, 10-2.
10-2. They beat the Giants. They lose to the Eagles. I have them losing because you brought up a really good point. The weather and it kind of being a bit of a short week by a day. So at that point, then I've got them beating the Rams at home. I've got them beating the Carolina Panthers, and then I have them losing to the Rams at the end of the year. I have them splitting with the Rams. So where you have the Chargers losing or beating the Seahawks, I have them winning, and you got the Eagles as a win for the Seahawks, and I've got it as a loss.
Yeah, pretty Misfit saying Charbonnet back for the Eagles. Yeah, I guess he could be.
He could.
So probably by that time of year, he'll have been close to a year. It'll be an 11-month recovery. But one thing to note with the NFC West race, it's not like Seattle's got the only difficult schedule in the division.
No.
I mean, have you so I've been kind of following the schedule all day just to see like what are some of the other teams doing and what are the national TV games. This is what the Rams start out with. And again, this is just the first 5 weeks. San Francisco and Australia. Giants on Monday night. That probably is a win. But then at Denver, at Philadelphia, and a 10 a.m. game, home to Buffalo. That's the first 5 games of the season.
We don't have Buffalo this year, thank goodness.
Yeah. If they come out of that stretch like 4-1, then golf clap, this is going to be a hell of a race for the NFC West. Yeah. Anything worse than that, and they are not the unstoppable machine that they have also been advertised to be. And even before they play Seattle, their 4 games leading up to the first Seahawks game on Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Eve against Green Bay, Kansas City at home, at San Francisco, home to Dallas.
It's going to be interesting because the one thing I don't bank on is I don't bank on Stafford remaining healthy all year again, and I do not bank on him being MVP Matthew Stafford again. That was such an anomaly last year, which, it's an interesting conversational piece because you hear the Rams players are still talking about, Seattle was good and that was a really good team, but if things go our way, like we're in that, okay, that's fine. I get that. The reason why I think this is such a sore spot for Rams fans is I think, and even players, is they look at that and go, how many things lined up perfectly for them? Stafford is healthy the entire year. They have Puka Nacua has an amazing year. Is this basically my opinion? I know all the off the field stuff, But him and Jackson Smith and Jigba were the two top receivers in the NFL last year. One in A, one B. You can have that conversation. But as a player on the field, he did produce at that level. Devontae Adams was a factor for them. They had a running game. Their defense was relatively well. They had a terrible special teams unit, which ultimately ended up costing the Thursday night game, and in some respects affected how they kicked the ball to Shaheed in the second game in the NFC Championship game. I think that's why it's such a sore spot, is because it's one of those things where it's like, damn, like everything, we needed a couple of bounces, and it's us with the Lombardi Trophy and not Seattle. However, when you look at Seattle side, they arrived a year early with a team that wasn't expected to win more than 7 games. It wasn't like they were picked to be, and they still did things that can be replicated a lot easier than, hey, Sam Darnold, go out there and throw 40 touchdowns. Go out there and, not turn the ball over. And that, like, a lot of the things the Rams were able to execute, I don't think are stuff they can duplicate again.
Yeah, I mean, if the Seahawks were 5% worse last year than they actually were, the Rams are lifting the Lombardi Trophy. Like, the Rams had a hell of a season, but Seattle just caught fire in a way that even a lot of the most optimistic Seahawks fans did not see coming. So this year is kind of their last hurrah with Stafford, I believe. And after that, it's all very much up in the air in terms of their roster and whether they really are going to turn the keys over to Ty Simpson. But it's no cakewalk for the Rams either in terms of the schedule. San Francisco is obviously playing most of the same team Seattle is. They got to play Kansas City and Denver and all these teams for the most part as well. They got to play the NFC East. So let's put it this way. I would not be shocked, nor would I be disappointed if Seattle had a worse record this year than last year, because let's face it, some of last year is the NFC South was bad. 8-9 won you the division, and Seattle swept that group. AFC South was better than expected, but they got the Colts with old man Phillip Rivers versus how they were looking with Jones and Taylor in the first half of the year. And they also played, I'm trying to remember.
Atlanta with Kirk Cousins.
Atlanta with Kirk, and they just dropped off. They played Washington with a bad version of Jaden Daniels and the team as a whole. So they had a lot of good wins, don't get me wrong. But they also, they played Tennessee as well. This year, they could be basically as good as last year's team, but maybe a win or two fewer because the schedule's a little bit tougher. So if they get out of this with at least 12 wins, then they're very much a Super Bowl contender. It's just so hard to, even for the dynasties of yesteryear, to maintain winning that many games on a season-to-season basis. And that's before the salary cap even existed. That's before free agency was a thing. Even the Steelers would occasionally dip a couple of games that they probably would have won the previous year because injuries happen. Just weird shit happens. I just mentioned the weather. There are a lot of variables that go into becoming a Super Bowl contender. And a lot of things broke Seattle's way. They didn't have the myriad of serious injuries. Like if Charbonnet got injured, tore his ACL in week 2, as opposed to the divisional round game, might have been a very different outcome for the season. But instead, what looked like serious injuries to Ernest Jones and Gray Zabel turned out to be nothing, or at least in Jones's case, miss a game or two. And Love missed a good chunk of the year, but Ty Okada stepped in. So whole lot of things can happen to derail your season. But also, I think that Mike Macdonald is an established, great coach at this point that I would expect him to keep running a tight ship and having answers for the rest of the NFL as far as how to attack his defense.
And I think that's going to be, to your point, Mookie, that's why I have that 13-11 kind of win total for myself, where I think 13 might be the high. And I agree. And I look at the schedule and I go, it did break. As much as we knew the opponents they were going to play, the way it's spaced out and the way it's working for them, it's actually a favorable schedule that way. However, I agree with you where it's like, hey, Denver is a team that's going to potentially cause you some problems because you have to go there on a short week into that situation. Like something like that's not what you dealt with last year as a team. So there are some new tests in this that'll be interesting for Mike Macdonald, and to play basically your biggest competition twice in the last 3 weeks of the season is again going to be a challenge for this team to have to deal with. And you're breaking in a new offensive coordinator. And there's a bunch of variables like that. Like I would say this, if Clint Kubiak's still the head coach, or not the head coach, the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks, I think this schedule and this season looks a heck of a lot easier in some respects because you have that continuity continuing. But now that you're kind of bringing in that new offensive coordinator, it's like, okay, do we lose a game because of bad play calls at some point or something like that? The things that we experienced early on with Clint, maybe this year they don't get out of those games with the victory, and maybe it does cost them more.
Yeah, I know we're excited about Fleury because he comes from the Shanahan background and he said a lot of the right things at the press conferences, but he still ain't ever called plays at an NFL level. And there is a rhythm and a reason and a strategy to that. And there's going to be an experience, and there's probably going to be some things that make us scratch our heads going, what is he doing? We expect a lot of the offense to stay the same because, I mean, him and Kubiak were briefly on the same staff in San Francisco. So there's going to be a lot of the same concepts, but there's going to be some of his imprint in this offense, you would like to think, that make it stand out a little bit more. And that the hope is that it's better than last year. It's a little less prone to some of the lulls we saw last year. But the other side of it is we're going to see, hopefully, in week one, what this offense looks like with the three receiver sets of JSN, Horton, and Shaheed. We're finally going to see that. Or, I mean, if it's not them literally out there in alignment, you're going to have Kupp, JSN, and Horton, or Kupp, JSN, and Shaheed with a full offseason to prepare. All that's at play. You're going to see the run blocking hopefully develop even more under John Benton so that Jadarian Price has, pardon the pun, a running start instead of having to struggle behind an inconsistent offensive line. So is there going to be a learning curve on offense? As Fro in the chat is saying, yeah, I'm sure. He's saying the defense will make history. I hope good history. But well, don't be surprised if the defense takes a step back. And by step back, I mean first to second, for example, or first to third. But one thing that is for sure, you do not need the first of everything to win a Super Bowl. You don't need the best of this, best of that, best of, the Seahawks can get away with having a defense that goes from first to say fourth. As long as the offense is like in the 5 to 10 range and the special teams remains elite, that balance of being good to great at everything can get you over the top, as opposed to, you need the absolute top tier of all of these key aspects of football.
That's the big thing that I'm going to be interested in is where's the special teams unit kind of hang out this year? Are they still an elite unit, or are there potentials for, impacts to be felt in guys that are lost, like a Derek Young as a gunner? Like, who are we having to fill that role? And it's easy to say, it's Cody White, it's Ricky White. Derek Young had some special ability as a gunner because of his size and speed. He made it very difficult for blockers to deal with him running down the field. And he deliberately caused a massive play in the NFC Championship game by scaring the bejesus out of the punt returner for the Rams, so much so that he dropped the punt. Mm-hmm. But Mookie, let's get into some super chats and comments here from the viewers. We got one here from Dennis. Goes, NFL is stupid making us play the Patriots opening day. What the fuck? No respect for the Seahawks. We're coming for them all.
I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, a Super Bowl rematch still sells.
Yep.
New England did win the AFC fair and square last year. And your only other viable option was Chicago. And I know that would have been a fresh matchup, but they were going to have to play the rematch at some point. Somebody pointed out correctly a decade ago when Denver beat Carolina in the Super Bowl in Santa Clara. Similarly, that's a way worse game than this Super Bowl from an entertainment value. It was a dull game and a sloppy game with all the turnovers and Peyton looking cooked. They were willing to have Trevor Siemian as opening night starter. And that was actually a very good game. Denver won on a missed field goal at the end. But Carolina ended up being bad, and Denver straight missed the playoffs, I think, by a game or two. So I don't see it as a big deal. I'm definitely going to be watching all the schedule videos other than ours. I checked to make sure, are there any Vrabel references in the Seahawks one? No. But I know that the Chargers did have a loose reference by saying there's a message from the New York Post. So we're at one. We'll see about the rest. But
oh boy. All right, we got Ian Victor in here. Goes, I wish Chicago was our opening opponent. but hear me when I say this, the opening kickoff game, I guarantee that there's going to be more coverage on Vrabel and Rossini instead of the Hawks and Pats. Oh, I would not put that past the NFL. I think they'll try to have ways where they really try and push the game. But if there's more stuff that comes out between now and opening kickoff, it's going to get pretty spicy out there.
The only thing I would say is that a lot of the traditional media has shied away from this story. Maybe because there could be the potential to dig out some more skeletons from the closet of insider journalism. But if it blows up into something more than just TMZ gossip, something that is
credible,
something that is almost something that essentially rises to the level of we need to investigate this if we're the NFL, then it'll become more of a story. Otherwise, I think Tirico and Collinsworth are just going to mention it in passing in a few minutes. They're not going to be bringing up Vrabel and Rossini like every snap. It's not going to be like that.
Now, this is the one thing I'll say about this game. They have to wear their throwbacks. New England's got to come out in their all white throwback uni, and Seattle comes out in the retro. That will make it even a better opening day kickoff.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the throwback, the uniforms, the jersey schedule is going to be this year, because if you have the New England throwbacks like from the old Steve Grogan 1980s
days,
yeah, you could do that and have Seattle in the throwbacks. Or I think realistically, Seattle will just wear the same unis as they did from the Super Bowl, just to keep that consistency, and save the throwbacks for one of the other primetime games. Like have the throwback against, I don't know, Kansas City. Or I think a cool road throwback would be the Seattle-Denver game. Throw it back to the old AFC West
Orange
days.
Crush versus the Orange Crush. That would be a good one. The Orange Crush versus the white throwback. But see, Seattle can't do the white throwback. That's the only problem, because they're only allowed to have a limited certain amount of jerseys, right, at that point. So, we'll have to see. We got Fro in the chat here, goes, when we beat McVay on Christmas, he'll probably try to get the NFL to make a rule change banning Christmas. Wouldn't put it past him. Would not put it past him.
Are the Rams not upset that they're one of 4 teams that's playing on Thanksgiving and Christmas, or Thanksgiving week or Christmas?
Yeah, no kidding.
Them, I think Buffalo is playing on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and so is Denver, I believe. No, Chicago. So that's 3 teams right there, and I forgot the 4th team, but so what? Rams, Bills, Broncos. Forgot the 4th team, but yes, it's a thing. Your holidays are going to be taken up with football, everybody.
We got Mike in here, goes, I predict 10-7. All right, fair enough.
Okay.
And we got Big Mike in here, goes, I ran into a guy in Vegas last week that had a Ravens shirt on, and he said the same thing. I think this was alluding to what you mentioned, Mookie, about having the franchise coach in the house and then losing him. Mike then goes, I just said thank you for a great coach. Well done, Mike. Well done. We got Amy in here, our moderator of the Discord chat and the chat in here. The other day, a friend who is a Vikes fan asked me for his QB back. Gosh, you want to talk about a franchise that has no idea how to handle the quarterback position outside of Cleveland? I think you could legitimately say the Minnesota Vikings are the other franchise.
They are also just a generally cursed franchise. Only they could have a 14-win season and end up as a wild card, while Darnold has the same record the following year and it gets him the 1 seed. So that might have been the difference right there and then. But
if you realistically think about it, you have Case Keenum has an unbelievable year, gets you all the way to, what was it, the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
And then you move off of him. Sam Darnold gets you 14 wins, and then you move off of him. Like, whenever they seem to have a budding star or, a good player, it's like they get rid of them, coming up. And it's just like, why do you keep shooting yourselves in the foot?
I'm curious to see what they do with the quarterback position, whether Kyler actually does win that job. He should.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Or it's over for Kyler if McCarthy wins the starting job. Or I guess the best case scenario for Minnesota is McCarthy is genuinely good in year 3. But they signed Kyler Murray for a reason, because I don't think they believe that, or at least O'Connell doesn't believe McCarthy is a good enough NFL starting quarterback. And look, there's a reason why the previous GM got fired. Their draft picks were terrible. And McCarthy went right into an NFL as favorable an NFL situation as you could get in terms of roster, and looks so out of place. It ain't that easy.
Mookie, you're not even talking about the guy that was probably their best quarterback last year, and that's Carson Wentz.
Yes. Wait, they re-signed him, didn't they?
They re-signed Carson Wentz. So you have Wentz, Murray, and McCarthy all there. I have money on Carson Wentz being the most successful quarterback in Minnesota next year.
You know, and they need to do a documentary explaining the thought process that went into playing and starting Max Brosmer against Seattle's defense.
Let's throw the kid out there. Let's see what he does. Miracles do happen. Ian Victor goes, my record prediction or expectation, 14-3 bold prediction, 15-2. Wow. Ian is jumping me even in that regard. I'm going to hang out on 13-4 Island again. I've already got everything set up there. I'm just going to go right back and plop myself down on the beach there.
That's not a bold prediction if they win one more than your expectation.
So what are you saying? The bold prediction should be undefeated here, Mookie, or 16-1?
16-1 or 17-0. 16-1, it has not been done yet in the 17-game era, and only one other team has ever won 16 in the regular season. That's the 07 Patriots. So 16 wins or 17 wins, that's bold. You know,
there you go, Ian. You have been called out by the man Mookie on your prediction not being bold enough. Just letting you know, Ian. There you go. Amy Holmes back in here saying, I'm thinking 14-3 again. Hey, I'm down for it. If I pick 13-4 and the Seahawks jump my island and go win more games this year, I'm okay with it. It has a good track record on that.
Mm-hmm.
We got Misfit in here goes, I would be sky high if we were 9-1 to begin the season. Many helmets on the new spike. I do love that. I love the spike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you're getting all your victims in the collection bucket. Like you could just cross them off. You know, they had the Madden horse trailer, so this is like a slightly more violent version of the Madden horse trailer.
This is very, very true. We got Ian Victor back in here. My question for the Dallas game is that will CeeDee Lamb or Dak Prescott be healthy at that time? That's a fair question because they've struggled with health issues lately. I feel like Dak probably, CD maybe there's something comes up in that point of time between week 1 to that point.
Yeah, of course, the deeper you get into the season, the more it's gonna happen to Seattle too. Nobody is pristine, has such an extraordinary clean bill of health. Somebody on this roster, this is not me wishing it into existence. It's just knowing the reality. Some key people on this roster are going to get hurt. They're going to miss some time, and hopefully as little time as possible. And that always is going to have an impact on the games and your schedule. So like we've experienced it on plenty of occasions, like the Tampa Bay game. I mean, that was probably about as injury related a loss as you could get on the defensive side of the ball, because by the end of the game, Reek's out, Witherspoon didn't play, Lawrence was out. And Hall was out. So now it's time for Nehemiah Pritchett to play his first meaningful snaps all season, and it didn't go well for him. So, you know, it's going to happen. You just hope that it doesn't derail the season, that it could happen to any team.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing you got to look at last year, like the amount of injury, and knock on wood, the amount of injury non-factors that played into Seattle really throughout the year. Like Cooper Kupp stayed healthy the entire year, which was the big knock on why the Rams let him go, right? He could never stay healthy. DeMarcus Lawrence stayed pretty much healthy all year long, which was another one I think a lot of people were kind of like, oh, like, is that going to be a guy that's going to be able to stay healthy? Look at his track record in Dallas. You got some of those breaks that you may not get. There may be a point this year, and again, if Torrey Horton's healthy for the whole year, it might not hurt as much, but you might lose Cooper Kupp for 3 weeks in the season because of something that pops up or flares up, right? Like, those are a couple things that may, you know, how much can Mike McDonald's team handle those type of internal adversities compared to last year where they didn't really have a lot of that. So that'll be something to kind of look at. WD Ford here goes, if I think back, Bryce was the first cat that predicted 13 or 14 wins last year. Kudos. I believe I was. I was like, I had Dan Viennes with me, and then Dan backed out and jumped onto his own island, I think at 12 wins. Dan was there. I had peer pressured him into it, and then Dan reverted a little back and pulled himself back by 1 win.
Yeah, and Dan's in the chat saying optimism is fun, but no one is winning 14 in the NFC West this year. So I'm going to hold him to that if Seattle finishes 14-3 again. But otherwise, yeah, this is going to be a whole lot of there are going to be some tough losses for all of these NFC West contenders. So Arizona there'll be a lot of losses. But for the other 3 teams, like there may be few losses, but the ones that they do take might just be to each other or to some of the other top teams in the NFL.
We got one here from Fro for a $5 donation. Thank you, Fro. He goes, no question. Just thank both of you for what you do. We'll appreciate that, Fro. Glad you're enjoying the content that's being produced here. And to everyone else, thank you as well for tuning in. We're almost up to 400 people viewing the show, which is absolutely awesome. We got Ian Victor here. He goes, I predict a pass rusher from the team will get 10 plus sacks this year and will bring a big time player here as well. Interesting. Who would you? Okay, so Mookie, if you had to put money on it right now, you predict a pass rusher currently on the roster that gets 10 plus sacks this year.
Maybe Hall kind of goes back to what he was 2 years ago when he's flirting rather with 10 sacks. I think he finished with 7 or something like that. And maybe this is his breakout year that has us all talking about extend Derek Hall, given the extension that Mafe didn't get. If what Ian means, bring a big time player here as well. I mean, there are not too many positions where they have to bring in a big time player, so it pretty much have to be at the pass rush. Dante Fowler gets double-digit sacks, and that would be a real twist in the tail because I don't expect him to play a heavy snap count. But I'll go with Hall if we're talking exclusively edge rusher, that is, because if you want me to go across the entire defensive line, I think Byron Murphy could end up with double-digit sacks this year.
Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to go, you got your edge, so you went with Hall, and then just D-line in general, you went with Byron Murphy. Okay, I'm going to go, it's going to be hot, I think. I think Chenna gets 10 sacks plus this year.
Ooh, yeah, I mean,
full off season of being healthy. Chenna got to those numbers before. I've got a feeling that, having Fowler here and that, I could see it. I could see Chenna getting 10 sacks. So I'm going to go Chenna with 10 sacks from the edge group. Oh, it sucks because I feel you on Murphy, but I got to go with Big Cat. I think Big Cat could get 10 sacks. I see it potentially. Again, I think Murphy's going to demand more attention maybe. As crazy as it sounds, he might demand it because he's a younger player and still has room for growth. And some teams might be, we need to deal with him a little bit more than Big Cat. And maybe Big Cat and Chenna equal 20 sacks between the two of them this year. That'd be quite the feat. That could be an interesting one. So yes, Dan made the comment that, optimism is fun, but no one in the NFC West is finishing with 14 wins. And he comes back with, I will be happy to take an L on that one. I think we all would, Dan. I totally agree. If somehow they end up with 14 or 15 wins, I agree. I'm capping mine at 13. I think 13 is the high point this year. And he brings up this too, which is, have you seen the Cardinals schedule? They might not have a chance at a win until week 14. Yeah, I've heard theirs is really rough. Like the Cardinals really kind of got shafted by the schedule makers in a way.
I'm just seeing something in the field goals comments because we have an article up for people to watch over there from Circus, SERCUS, saying the Seahawks could play the Rams 3 times in the space of 5 to 6 weeks. And that is something I didn't even think about that.
Playoffs.
If they play them again in the playoffs, if they're as good as we think they are, it could be round 1 in Christmas, round 2 with the first or second week of 2027, and then divisional round, NFC champion, one of those playoff rounds. That probably has not happened very often in NFL history. And also a shout out to Strong Max saying my instant reactions are about to win another 14 piece and a second consecutive owl, which let's go with that.
Yeah, let's go with that. We got one here that's interesting from Dan. He goes, LaFleur will need to find a way to show he's the guy to lead them when they take a QB the next year. He'll have to convince them without actually winning any games. Yeah.
Yes.
This is where it's so funny for me because I look at 2 of the openings that became available, Arizona and Vegas. And if I'm a young coach, those are not 2 divisions I'm like being like, yeah, I want to go be a head coach and have to try and rebuild those teams with Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton in that division. And then on the flip side, I want to go hang out with Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, and Mike McDonald. Like, that's ideally where I want to go start my rebuild. Like, let me go rebuild in Florida. I'll go hang out with Miami. Like, I think that's a fine. Like, even though New England's in that, like, I think that's a much easier potential division, the AFC East, to at least start your rebuild process.
Yeah, and Dan wasn't kidding with the schedule. The Cardinals start the year at the Chargers, so I got my survivor pool pick already set, and then Seattle, San Francisco, at the Giants, home to Detroit, at the Rams, home to Denver, at Dallas, bye week, home to the Rams, at Kansas City, home to Washington, home to Philadelphia, the Jets in week 15. And
there's your win. Numero uno.
Yes. I don't know where. Yeah. The Jets were the first win.
Yeah. Jets are the first win.
Yeah.
First opportunity to really get a win.
Yeah, probably. Although you never know if the Giants just stink enough that Arizona could pull out a W. At Saints, home to Raiders, and then San Francisco. So I see we might get the flip. Maybe we don't have a team win 14 in the NFC West, but we definitely could have a team lose 14 in the NFC West.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it up to you to figure out which team that could be.
No kidding. X-Wing's got an interesting one. He asked Dan this, but he goes, if you were Arch Manning, is who he's referring to, would you wait and go back to college for another year?
What, the third season? No. Unless he's having a terrible season.
He's coming out.
He did finish this last season much better. It's just that all the hype surrounding him, that Ohio State game was so bad. And then some of the other games during conference play, he just didn't look like a future number one pick. But he did better as the season progressed. I think he was playing with some sort of shoulder injury.
Yes. Watching him throw throughout the year, and just as a quarterback coach and someone that trains the position, something was not right with his arm early on in that year, whether they overworked it in, training camp and all that type of stuff, or something. He tweaked something, did something, because his delivery was so low and lacked so much velocity. To then when you watch him later on in that year, you see some of that arm strength come back, because he does actually have a decent arm, and I would say an NFL arm. He's not an elite NFL arm, but he's got an NFL arm. And, his uncle didn't have an elite NFL arm either when he came out.
Yeah. And it's funny when you see the scouting reports about Leaf versus Manning, and the whole talk was Leaf has got the arm, man. He's got the better physical traits than Peyton. And we also saw when Peyton's arm started to go on him, it really went with the neck and everything else. Like, even in the middle of the year they went to the Super Bowl against Seattle, he was throwing some ducks, like against the Colts. And so, but at his best, like he beat you with his brain, and he had some. He was a better athlete than given credit for in terms of his scrambling early on in his career and pocket movement. But arm, I wouldn't put his arm in there with like Marino, for example. Or, of course, if they use modern-day quarterbacks like the Josh Allens or Mahomes.
Fun trivia question. Let's see if I can put Mookie on the spot here. What team did Peyton Manning throw his first ever NFL touchdown pass on? And it was his first pass ever in the NFL.
Was it Miami?
Nope.
Was it really Seattle? I don't know.
It was Seattle. Was Seattle.
So that must have been one of the few times he played. He didn't get to play Seattle often as a Colt.
No,
but
he did not. All right. Well, with that small little nugget of trivia out of the way, Mookie, I think we're going to wrap up today's show. For anyone else that, hasn't had a chance, head on over to Field Goals. Check out all the stuff that's being done over there by the great and awesome coworkers of ours that do such a fantastic job creating content on there and articles. Mookie, anything in particular that you've got coming up over there, or that anyone's got coming out over there on Field Goals?
We will have some more scheduled takeaways. I'll chip in my own that I didn't have time or even immediately think about during this live recording, but more scheduled takeaways rather. If you don't know the preseason schedule, you can go over to Field Goals and also check that out, because that's also set August 15th against Dallas, August 23rd against Tennessee, August 28th against Kansas City. The Dallas game is at home on a Saturday night. So you never know. Maybe you'll run into us at a special syndicate episode for a preseason game. We'll all that to be determined, but we'll also have some draft stuff. Like, the draft did just happen a couple weeks ago. And in fact, Alexandre Castro just did something on Julian Neal and why he just screams Seahawks cornerback. Josh Height, who also joined the Seahawks, the field goal staff fairly recently, and is also a part of the Hawks eye. He did something on Julian Neal's fit with Seattle secondary and just some of his athletic traits. So we're going to keep rolling through this with the next few draft selections up through June. And in fact, we can all kind of take a breather because this is the last major thing on the NFL offseason calendar until training camp in late July. We will still have some roster news, of course, and some people getting cut, some people getting signed. Seattle signed 2 undrafted rookie receivers today and waived a couple of their UDFA class, Devion Deal and Michael Briscoe, which is interesting because it said failure to disclose physical condition, which you don't see too often. So that could void his guarantees. But yeah, we'll keep tabs on that. And of course, we'll have syndicate periodically throughout this offseason. And then stay tuned as far as anything with training camp and preseason on location.
Yeah, Mookie kind of said it really well there, but we will be doing a live show, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, at Fast Fashion Brewing again. So we'll make sure that this year that gets really promoted out so we can get as many of you guys that live in the Seattle area or in the Washington area that want to come hang out with Mookie, Brandon Kane, Dan Vians, and myself there on location. We'll do a fun live show, and we, depending on when we go, if we are there for the Dallas home preseason game, we will definitely probably be doing a live pregame and postgame show following that preseason contest. More of those details will come out, but we will have Seahawks Syndicate next week, I'm pretty sure. I also will be back tomorrow. I have Corbin Smith joining me on the show, and we're going to get Corbin's thoughts from rookie minicamp, as well as just his overall kind of thoughts on where this team is going and can Seattle be better than they were last year in 2026. And then on Saturday, I'll be back bright and early, 12 p.m. Pacific time, for a show with 12 Talk with Josh and Mitch over there from our UK Seahawkers group on that side of the pond. So they'll be on as well. So if you haven't already, head on over, click the QR code, scan it, do whatever. It'll take you to the Discord. The Discord is a great community to hang out in. And if you haven't already, click that notification button, sub up to the channel. Doesn't cost you a penny. Appreciate everybody's time and hanging out with me and Mookie here. And we'll see you guys in the next one. And as always, stay loud, be proud, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.